are video games art? I mean, to put it simply, of course it's fucking art. Like it's a resounding yes. Like unequivocally. Of course video games are art. You can even go as far as to say that it's the best type of art available right now. And I know I sound extremely biased, and maybe I am a little bit because it's my favorite like medium of entertainment. It's my favorite. I think I said that correctly. Medium of entertainment. I think so. Yeah. Like I like that more than movies. I like video games more than movies, than music, than and that also has a lot to do with the fact that video games have music and you know sound scores, cool tracks from unknown artists to well-known universal artists. Like you have all the best things in one place, and that would be like a video game. Awesome visuals, awesome music, awesome uh literary structure. Sometimes you'll read stuff in video games is just as powerful as an actual book written by a well-known novelist or whatever the case may be. I don't when I hear people talk about, or I'm sorry, when people ask are video games art, I feel like you're trolling me. I feel like you're baiting me into a clickbaity situation, right? Like if we're online and you ask me that, I'm like, okay, you just want to argue. You just want to argue because of course fucking video games are art, right? Like art itself is all encompassing, right? Like it's just art can be anything, and that's what makes unfortunately, although I do think video games are art, as a matter of fact, I don't think video games are art. I know video games are art. I will put anything that you can think of. I'll put my wallet down on it. It's not much money, but I'll put it down. Anything can be art. Like, you can't sit here and tell me that you can take a blank canvas and throw a splash of bright paint on it and go, "Yep, I want thousands and thousands of dollars for this masterpiece, self-proclaimed masterpiece," and people pay it. People do. I've seen artwork that's been sold for thousands of dollars, if not more, that I'm just like, what the fuck is that? But that's when you really start to break down art, right? Because just before just before I started recording this, I was like, let me look at the literal definition of art. Like, what does it mean? And it's a little, just as I expected, just like art itself, the definition of art is very vague. Like it's very, it can, it's like open to interpretation, which is cool. I like stuff like that. But it's like art can be anything. Art can be, a picture. Art can be a drawing. Art can be a sculpture. Art can be a shoe. You can literally put a shoe in an exhibition, and that can be art. Like, and I get that because one of the definitions that I never really considered that I just read. So I just learned this 5 minutes ago. Well, I'm not gonna say learned, but it really like drilled it in my head. It said that art is about what you feel, not the resulting work. So like the way I interpreted that is art is not what you art is not really so much what you create, it's what it makes you feel. So art is not what you create, art is what the creation makes you feel. So, which is like that's a cool definition. It sounds pretty cool if you say that at a party or something. Makes you seem kind of smart. But like that's also not true, right? Because there's another definition that I read also before I started recording this that said, art is also like a showcase, a display of technical prowess, right? So it's like I'm so good at this one particular thing as a painter, as a sculptor, as a, all these are traditional, I guess, methods of art, right? Because usually when people think of art in the literal sense, they think of like paintings and drawings and sculptures. So that's why I'm using those as examples. But once again, art can be anything. So if I'm a fantastic sculptor, if I'm one of those, then I'm really good at, sculpting intricate details on like a bust. I can make a bust look like a real man with like wrinkles and pores and all this crazy shit. Like, of course, that's art. You look at that and you go, God damn, this man is fantastic. Or this woman is fantastic. They're great at these sculpting lifelike features on stone, on marble, whatever material they use. So you can't tell me that art is not about what the actual art is. It's about what you feel. No, because art is often about the actual art itself. Sometimes it's like, sometimes art can just be like, look how good I am. I'm so fucking good. Check this out. And then I'll come check it out and I go, holy shit, you are good. And he goes, I know. And I go, you're great. I know. That's why I did it. That's why I called you over here. Like in the most like barest essence, that's what some art is for some people. They're just like, I just want to show you how good I am. And that's awesome. As long as you don't be a dick about it, right? As long as you don't get like super egotistical and start slamming other artists and whatever the case is, which often is the case, right? Sometimes you'll see someone like that's really good at something and their ego gets the best of them, and they start just, attacking critics and attacking, former teammates or former competitors, and just not being classy, just being, kind of a dick. And you can apply that to many people and many, well, I'm not going to say situations. That wouldn't make sense, would it? I don't know. So how can you tell me that video games aren't art? Like coding itself, right? Creating a world, right? Like I'm going to use, to me, once again, one of the most beautiful worlds I've ever seen in a video game would be like Bethesda's worlds, like the Elder Scrolls worlds, especially the last few recent games in the last 10, 15 years or so, which would be like Oblivion, like, and also Skyrim. You can even argue ESO. But like I remember when I first saw Oblivion, when I got out of that sewer, and it asks you like, do you want, is this the character you want? And you kind of have to finalize it. So once you do, once you get out of the sewers, you see this lush green like world, and then you look up in the sky, and it's like this big blue, beautiful sky with like clouds dotting the entire sky. You see how poetic that sounded? I remember thinking like, God damn, that's so beautiful. And all this came from like programming, from coding, and how is that not art? You used some binary language. Is that what, how you would, I don't know what I'm saying. I guess it just sounds cool. But you use some sort of computer language, all these characters and values, and you created a world, a fucking world from numbers and letters. Like what? What, dude? That's, how is that not art? You're creating something, and then you're creating also for emotional effect, right? Of course you are. Sure, lots of people are creating stuff for money. Nothing wrong with that. The motivation honestly doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter if you are creating art for money. It doesn't, I mean, of course, once again, as long as you're not an asshole about it and you're not greedy and you're not like encroaching on other people, then make as much art for money as you want. That's the way I say. As long as nobody gets hurt in any shape, way, or form, do that shit. Do it. Fucking do it. The motivation of making great art does not matter, whether it's for financial purposes, whether it's for emotional purposes, whether it's for just a hobby, just to relax, just to de-stress. What's that word that's fucking common nowadays? Decompress. I'm gonna decompress. Well, that, it doesn't matter as long as the art it's good. If the art it's good, and it doesn't even have to be like physically good, as long as it can elicit some sort of a strong emotional response from you, then you've accomplished, right? You've accomplished what you set out to do, right? Sometimes you'll make art that's not necessarily good looking, but you look at it and there's something about it that you just go, God damn, that makes me feel things. Whatever these things may be, whether it's positive, negative, whether you're whimsical, whether you're nostalgic, you feel something. And That's great, and why why is that still a question? Why is it I just saw the question today, if I'm not mistaken, about, if our video games art. And before I even continue, this is just gonna uh, are video games art? That's such a wide open question with so many answers and so many examples, right? That I'm gonna publish this episode on YouTube, and I guarantee you, like fucking a half an hour later, I'm gonna go, shit, I forgot to ask that question, or shit, I forgot to insert this as an example, whether it's, something someone said about the subject, someone who's actually in the video game, industry, probably says something really cool about video games being art. And, I can't even reference that because this is such a wide subject. So I'm going to miss a lot of shit. That's for sure. And all this is just, coming out of my head. I didn't do the only research I've done prior to recording this was what is art? Like I looked up the literal definition of art, and it was somewhat satisfactory, right? Like I kind of was like, okay, I can get behind some of that. But so where was I anyway? So, oh yeah. So the reason why I would think that some people don't think video games are art, it's probably because of the reputation that some people still see video games as. I believe that there's still a large number of people out there who believe that video games are a waste of time, that there's nothing constructive about video games, and that it's rotting your brain. And, people who typically play video games are overweight and they drink Monster Energy and eat Doritos. I've said this before many, many times. I think there's a large number of people who think that. And can I tell you that that's an unfair view on things? I mean, honestly, if you kind of just if you think in absolutes like that, right? Like if you just go, all these people are this and all these people are that, that's dangerous. You should never think like that because there's always exceptions, right? Humans are, we think in black and white. At least most of us do. I genuinely believe that, you know? Sure, there are some subjects and some things that we go, okay, we're not budging from this. We genuinely believe this, right? And that's fine as long as it's not fucking stupid. As long as it's not a stupid like if you come up to me and you say all black people are bad, I'm gonna go, okay, that's fucking dumb. That makes no sense. But unfortunately, there are some people out there who think like that, you know, and even something as serious as that, as racism, we can go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Something, not as serious as racism, like, video gamers, they're all fat and lazy. And it's like, really, dude? Like, don't think like that. Don't think in absolutes because, as I gave you from my examples, that could be very dangerous. It can be, I'm sure, like, not to sound like a fucking philosopher or anything like that, but like, like the yin yang. Sorry, but yeah, like the yin yang. There's you can't have evil with a little bit of good, and you can't have good with a little bit of evil. Did I say that right? I probably said the same thing. Whatever. But you understand what I'm saying. I genuinely believe in that. I believe that you shouldn't think in absolutes. I'm pretty sure that's not what, like, I believe it's Taoist, if I'm not mistaken, who created the yin yang thing. I'm probably pulling all of this out of my ass. I don't know. I didn't look up the fucking yin yang before I started recording. But I will say that that's an excellent way to kind of model your views in life, right? Like understand that not everything is as black and white as you think it is. Like there's always shades of gray, always present in everything and anything. So someone who already has the misconception of video gamers being out of shape and talentless and you know just not doing anything with their life, like someone who already has that view of a video gamer, it's very easy for them to say, "Oh, well, video games are art because look at the people who play them. They're fat, they're lazy. Why the shit that's making them fat and lazy? You're calling art now? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a biased, you know, view. So it's of course if someone who views video gamers like that, of course they're not going to think that video games are art. So they're going to throw their 2 cents in and go, "Nope, video games are art. Look at the people who play them. Case closed." Once again, that's thinking in absolutes. Not a smart thing to do. So, okay, so let's say you do have a bad viewpoint on video gamers. Is it possible for you to bend a little bit? Is it possible for you to go, okay, I don't agree with that type of lifestyle, sitting down for hours, being immobile, practically immobile, and now you're calling that art. But like, okay, I guess some games look pretty. I guess some games have pretty good music. I guess some games are fun. Like bend a little bit because that is true. I guarantee you, those same people who say that, if you give them like Mario or like like a simplistic game that's also fun, I guarantee you they'll have fun. Like those old ladies, I'm stereotyping, but like those old ladies who play Candy Crush, right? Like those are the people that say video games aren't art, but they're like addicted to their Candy Crush. Or you know what I mean? Like it's kind of in a weird way, it's kind of hypocritical because it's like, you're saying you don't like video games as a whole, but you do like certain video games. So it's like it's very weird, and I see that a lot actually. I actually have a coworker who has a son-in-law who apparently, according to her, all he does is just he's on the computer all day and just all that's all he wants to do is just play games. He's not lazy, he's not motivated, and she doesn't like video games because of that, right? Because she's sees that her son-in-law is not doing her son-in-law also is married, obviously, which makes her her son-in-law, but he also has a child, and she feels like he's not stepping up being a quote unquote man or quote unquote husband because he's not pushing himself to make good money and he's not pushing himself to do great in life because all he does is play video games, right? And I told her, I said, well, if that's all he does, like if he doesn't want to do anything else but play video games, then obviously that's a problem, right? But you got to look at it like this. Maybe there's something going on with him and he's using video games as a crutch. So it wouldn't be fair for you to say, oh, well, fuck video games because it's making this guy less of a man and a husband. Then you go, okay, well, it's easy to blame video games, right? But like, what about him? Why don't you talk to him? What's up with him? Maybe he's just using, like I said earlier, video games as a crutch. Maybe he's going through some things. Maybe he's anxious. Maybe that's the way he releases stress and he's like, I don't know anything else to do. Like, talk to him. Like, what's the problem here? Like, what is it? Like, you know? So that was, of course, she's old school. And by old school, I mean like she's like, like she's one of those people that like, which reminds me of like people in my family without getting specific. But like they were born during tough times, where there wasn't a lot of food. Like my grandparents like didn't have a lot of food. They were all poor. Then they decided to have kids, and then they like, treated their kids very rough, very harsh. And those kids are my mom, my parents. And then they, in turn, my parents would, treat us harsh because that's all they know. It's just a systemic system of abuse, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, it's or whatever the case may be. That's what I genuinely believe. So she comes from that. She comes from like, if she has a hammer, and like they say, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So even delicate problems that, you need some finesse and some, patience to deal with, they're just going to use that hammer to just hammer that problem on down. Like you can't use that strong, blunt approach to everything in life, right? You need like to be intricate. You need to specialize, especially if it's specialized advice, especially if it's like your son or like someone in your family. Like this person is going to be with you, Lord willing. This person is going to be with you for the rest of your life, your mother, your son, for at least a very long time. And it's like, why do you want to make them feel terrible? Why do you? And I understand that's not a lot of people's, um, like a lot of mothers and fathers that were born in these harsh times and, hurt people and all that. I understand that a lot of them don't know what they're doing, Like, you know what I mean? Like that's just the way they're wired. That's the way that that's the only way that they know how to live life. So therefore they're going to instill that on their kids. And they don't some of them don't even realize that what they're doing is wrong. That's not the proper way to parent. You know what I mean? And some of them do. And are those are the people that scare me. The ones that know that they're doing something bad to someone else and then they continue doing it. They're very well aware. And then, it gets even darker. Like people who do that and then don't feel no sympathy for that person. Like they know that they're fucking this person over in one shape, way, or form, and they don't even feel bad about it. Like that's a level of darkness that's like I can't comprehend that. Like you got to have like no conscience. Um Damn, I went deep there. Oh yeah, so back to the coworker who hates video games because her son-in-law is a loser in her eyes. Those were I'm not going to say those were her exact words, but in her language cuz she came from a different country to America. And in her language, she basically described him as a loser. But she'll sit there and play video games on her phone. Which is funny. I don't know if she understands the disconnect there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll sit there and I'll hear like little sounds and stuff, and I'll turn around and I'll look, and she has her phone in like, what is it, landscape mode? I think it is. She like turns her phone to the side, and she's playing some little crossword puzzle game or some game there that's just making all this noise. It's like one of those shitty mobile games too, right? Like the ones that like have 30 ads every 2 seconds, and one of those things. Basically every mobile game. Haha. No, I'm just joking. Mobile games are horrible. But people love them. I heard in Japan that's the number one way people game. Like people game in Japan. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. People in Japan game more on mobile than they do in any other way, more than consoles, more than PC. I have no idea if that's true. I probably just pulled that out of my ass. So I can understand how some people don't think video games are art because they've had bad experiences with it, right? Because you can attribute that to anything. If you've had a bad experience in a certain neighborhood, then you're gonna think that neighborhood is shitty all the time, right? You had a bad experience at a restaurant. You're gonna be like, oh, that food is shitty. I'm never going to a restaurant again. And you might have just come at the wrong place, wrong time. You know what I mean? Like it might be an actual good neighborhood. It might be an actual good restaurant, but you'll never know because you'll never give it another shot. But I understand that that's just human psychology, right? People, we tend to avoid things that we don't like. It's how we survive. That's how our ancestors survived. That's how our descendants survived, and our ascendants will survive. I think I said that correctly. It's hard for you to come up to me and show me a picture of a splash of paint on a canvas and say this is art, but then turn around and say that video games aren't art. That's insane to me. It's insane to me. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. And like I said earlier, it's you've got like it's the hodgepodge. Is that I know that's a real word, but I'm still not 100% sure what that word means. I think it means a mixture of things. I'm just gonna use it as that. If I'm using it incorrectly, I'm dumb. It's like a hodgepodge of a bunch of different things, right? Like you've got music, you've got great writing, you've got great graphics, great like all there these things are all the every little element that a video game is made out of it's art itself, right? So you have all these elements of art combining to make one giant giga art. It's just like a Voltron of art. You know what I mean? Like it's just so that's why I think I don't know for sure, but that's why I just hit my mic. That's why I think that people or some people don't view video games that art as art because there's still a taboo attached to video games, a certain stigma that and that video games aren't great or time wasting. And lately, there's been a big pushback because the number one defense that I see people use whenever someone says that video games aren't art and video games are a waste of time is like, what about esports? I'm sick and tired of that fucking excuse. I'm gonna be honest with you. Not everyone is gonna be an e-sport competitor or whatever the fuck you call them. I already told you I have a problem with it being called esports. I don't feel like it's a sport. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to cause no trouble. Do I feel like it's something that you should be done? Yes, I fucking support it. You should totally make teams and go around, have a fucking company pay for your stay at hotels and travel all around the world in video game competitions. That sounds fucking awesome. I'm 100% behind it. I just don't like the name. I only have a problem with the name. Why couldn't it be e-comp, e-competition, or, e challenge or e something? But the sports is what kind of throws it off for me, like I'm just like, it's not like sports in the traditional sense. It's you're using sports very loosely when it comes to video games. Like you're using it very, very loosely. Like it barely makes the qualification, if at all. But that's my only problem with it. But anyways, you have a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, if you think video games are a waste of time, then how do you explain esports?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's that one special circumstance, that one special instance where you can say that video games aren't a waste of time, because those people, not you, Chad, or you, Billy, that just play Call of Duty because you guys are avoiding your actual responsibilities. That's not the same. You can't cite someone else who's an exception, who's extremely good at playing these video games because they do it professionally. Chad and Billy are just regular casual game players like me. I'm Chad and I'm Billy, but I won't use that as an excuse. I'll talked about it, and I have said it before. I won't lie. I have said, like, yeah, how do you explain esports people? But I never said that I was on that level, or I never said that that's what I also want to do. And I also don't want that to be used as an excuse, right? Like, oh, I'm playing video games and I'm playing video games all day and shirking all of my responsibilities because I'm training to be an e star, an e sporter, sportster. I don't know. I'm training. I'm not doing shit with my life. I'm sitting in my mom's basement just playing video games all goddamn day. And every time my girlfriend or my mom says, "Hey, you're gonna get a job, dude," I go, "No, man, I'm training to be on the Capcom team, mom." Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, dude, no, you're not. Get the fuck up and get a job, dog. After you finish your responsibilities, go and play some games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not telling you to do what I do, but I'm just saying that's what I have a job. I have, I'm a functional adult in this society. I'm independent. There's no one that I'm not relying on anybody for money aside from my job. No other person or company is paying for anything for me. And it's like, I'm not saying, hey, be like me. Pat yourself on the back. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. People hate hearing that shit. Um, for rightful reasons too. Obviously, it doesn't apply to everyone, but it does apply to a large portion of people. However, I'm not saying be like me. I'm just saying that I love video games, and I don't see myself quitting video games anytime soon. But I always have a specific time of the day where I'm playing video games. If it's a part, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I break my own rules. Sometimes I say fuck it, and if I'm off, I'll play video games all goddamn day. I've done that before, especially when Skyrim came out. Geez, don't get me started. And I'm probably gonna do that shit when Starfield comes out. Like, I'm just gonna be like, haha, remember when I told you, don't be a loser? I've been a loser for a month. So, like, okay, all right. I guess in instances, the same way junk food is okay here and there, Doritos and Monsters, they're all right. I like Doritos and I like Monsters, but if you eat them shits every day, not good for you. Same thing with video games. You're playing video games all day, all night, all day, all night. You're not doing anything with your life. That's obviously that's a problem. I mean, I shouldn't even have to fucking say that. We're all adults here, right? At least I'm hoping so. And if you're not an adult, I hope you're a very mature young person. It can be a problem, sure, and anything can. You can use anything as a crutch, right? And then people tend to do that, right? Like if you uh, I always say this as an example, right? Guns is a big one. I'm not even going to get into that because that's like a major political issue, and that's going to be like another half hour of me not talking about the subject that I originally intended to talk about and just straying off and talking about other tangents of shit that has nothing to do with the original subject. Whatever, bear with me. You know, Billy shoots up a school. Ah, that's too close to home. Probably not the greatest example. I already started off on a bad foot. Billy does something bad with a gun to other people. Do you blame Billy or do you blame the gun? You know that I feel like common sense would say, well, no, that you blame Billy. Billy was the gun was just a tool. You know, same thing with like alcohol. If Billy gets fucked up on Smirnoff, gets behind a car, crashes, kills himself and someone else also, right? Do you blame Smirnoff? Do you blame the car? I mean, do you blame Billy or Smirnoff? I want to believe in my heart that most rational people would say, I believe that it was Billy's fault. Billy shouldn't have never got behind the wheel if he knew he was fucked up. But you know, you'll have lots of people out there that go, no, it's Smirnoff. We need to ban Smirnoff. Everyone needs to stop drinking alcohol because Billy died. You have people like that makes no fucking sense in my world, but you know, to some people it does. To some people it's like, yeah, that seems about right. I feel like that's an approach lots of people take, not only politically, but just in everyday life, right? You know what I mean? Like another major political issue, since I might as well just be stirring the hornet's nest at this point. It's like ban the police. ACAB, all cops are bastards. Okay, all cops are bastards until you need one, right? Defund the police. Okay, defund the police. Who are you going to call when someone breaks in your house? Your friend? What's your friend going to do? He doesn't have a gun, remember? Doesn't have one. He called for everyone to not have guns. So now we don't have guns and we don't have police. So you think what crime's just going to stop? People are just going to go, well, you know what? Since there's no tools for me to do any crime and since there's no real motive, I guess I'll just be a good guy. You know, it doesn't work like that. But, you know, whatevs. So it's video games art. Are video games art? Absolutely. In every way, shape, or form. I genuinely believe that. That was the best segue known to man, right? I think it's going to continue getting even more weirder, a little more funkier. You know, now that VR is still not like I genuinely believe that VR is still not where it can be. I do see a large promise for VR. And I think that's once it becomes even more mainstream or just as mainstream as like regular gaming. And by regular gaming, I mean like mobile gaming and like PC gaming, you know, gaming with a controller and screens and TVs and monitors. That to me, that's obviously the bulk of how people play games, you know. But I do believe that there will come a time in our lifetime, possibly in maybe in the next 10 years. You know what, in the next 10 years would be feasible that VR gaming is going to be just as prevalent as regular gaming. I really do believe that. Now, when VR gaming ends up becoming as mainstream as like regular gaming, that's what I'm calling it, regular gaming. That's going to open up a whole new world of if our video games art, right? Like sure, it's kind of the same video game, but imagine the innovative shit that you're going to see in VR besides porn. You're going to see, you know, I can't even like right now I can maybe give you a few examples of some innovative games and I'm like, wow, that's very artistic, that's very creative. They use a lot of ingenuity creating this mechanic or this type of game. But there's shit that we haven't even like thought of yet. And by we, I mean like us, the general consumers, the general public. Like there's gonna be VR games that are gonna be like, what the fuck? Like those Beat Saber games. Like I'm not a fan. I'm not a big fan of like rhythm based games like Guitar Hero and all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're cool, but they're not for me. Same way I see some sports games and I go, that's cool, but they're not for me. That was cool, right? You got these two little fucking sticks and you're hitting the air essentially, but it's like registering as actual, you know, music or whatever. That's fucking ingenuity right there. It's really cool to see something like that. Seen boxing games, or you're actually that's been around for a while. There's nothing revolutionary about a VR type boxing games. I'm sure there's like a million of those out. But if you really think about it, it's like, you know, is that not art? Do you know what I mean? Like, and then imagine, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they have like actual exhibitions that you can go to VR in a VR world, like actual art exhibitions where people are just walking around a museum looking at actual art. You know what I mean? Like, how fucking cool is that? That would be kind of ironic, right? So it's like, how can you say at that point? How can you say, hey, the machine that's enabling me to see art, it's not art itself. Like the machine, you know what I mean? Like it gets weird. It gets weird at that point. It gets very intricate. But I guess, like, to go full circle, one definition of art says that it doesn't matter what the art is about the emotion. And then another definition of art is it's definitely like, I want you to see the technical prowess. I want you to see how good I am at this one thing. So it's like these are kind of, I believe that, what's the word? Mutually exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive or inclusive. I fucking know. What I'm saying is that they don't have to be in their own separate worlds. They can be married together, right? Like art can be that. Art can be just looking at something that someone else did that is really fucking cool because they're really good at. Look at Bob Ross. He was the shit at painting trees, right? I can watch that man paint trees all goddamn day long, and it's not only because they're beautiful, but also because he's so good at it. And also his personality, man. His personality was like one of a kind, man. He just seemed like a really good dude. But point is, I can watch him make these trees, and it's not only the emotional response that it elicits from me. Like I feel calm. I feel like I could just lay back and just zone the fuck out watching, Bob Ross do his thing. But it's also just how good he is at it. How it starts off like as a blob, and you're just like, that makes no fucking sense. How is he gonna make that into a tree? Like that makes no. And then you go, oh, that moment, right? That little, oh, it starts to like come into fruition, and it's really cool. It's really cool when that happens because you're like, yeah, that's not that. That's, of course, Bob Ross is an example of art in the literal sense, but I don't know. I mean, I guess that's my final answer. My final answer would be, I think that some people who don't think video games, or I'll go out on a limb and say that I think that most people who don't think that video games are art are the same people who view video games as a waste of time, which makes sense. The correlation makes sense to me. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I can see how someone will come to that conclusion. I don't think that's fair, but that's just the way it is. I remember reading this article. This is the last thing I'm going to say. And I read this article a while ago, and it had something to do with like how over 50% of people in the world, or it might have been in the world or America, I can't remember where the exact study was done, play video games. So over 50%, let's just say it's global, over 50% of the people in this world play some sort of a game. That's a lot of fucking people, dude. If I'm not mistaken, I believe as of 2023, we are at over 8 billion people in the world. It might be more. I heard something about 11 billion. I don't fucking know. But we have billions and billions of people on this earth. Imagine 50% of, like, let's stick with the 8 billion number, right? What's 50% of a billion? It's 4 billion, right? Dude, I wish I can tell you that I wasn't joking right now. That's how bad at math I am. But let's say it's 4 billion. Bro, 4 billion people playing a video game? That's crazy. That's like half. It's like half. It's a lot of people, man. All right? It's a lot of people. And it makes me kind of feel good because for a while there, for a long time there, I'm pushing on 40's door. So when I was younger, as I was growing up, not when I was younger, as I was growing up, I was very well aware of the stigma of playing video games all day long. I can see how people would think it was a waste, and then your parents would tell you that, stop playing video games, stop, go out there and get a job, or go out there and play with your friends, go get some fresh air. And then knowing in my heart of hearts, knowing that, hey, there's something more to this than just addiction. There's something more to this than just there's something that I love. There's something beautiful about it's like a book, how people love books, right? Because they escape temporarily into this world that the author has created. This, oftentimes beautifully crafted world. It's an escape. And not only that, you're also learning. You're learning new words. You're learning, lots of new things where you're reading. So you're gaining intelligence while also being entertained. Same thing with video games. Same effect. Coming from someone who, when I was a kid, as I said earlier, I'm almost 40. For the first 10 years of my life, I didn't know any English. Like my parents spoke to me in Spanish. And for the first 10 years of my life, I remember going to school and I couldn't even understand what the kids were saying, let alone the teacher. So they had to put me in these special classes. I think they were called like ESOL or something like that. And they're like, classes for people who don't know English. And I remember thinking when I was a kid, this is one of my like fucking, I don't remember a lot, dude. But I do remember thinking like I gotta learn English, man, because there's a lot of cool shit that I'm missing out. I remember thinking that. Like I remember going like, man, I wish I knew what that poster said. I'll give you an example. One of the earliest examples, I think I was like in the second grade. There was this big poster on the wall. Not on the wall. It was on the closet door of the classroom. And it was a music teacher. I still don't know what the poster said, but I remember it had the word people. It was like emblazoned into the poster. It was a big poster, almost covered most of the door. And it said something. It was an advertisement for something, maybe a book or something. I don't know. But one of the words in the advertisement said people. In my mind, I thought that said people because I didn't know that, that's how you would say, you wouldn't, I didn't know that you pronounce it as people in English. And I was still thinking in Spanish. So I was like, people. What is a people? ¿Qué es people? Like in my head. And I remember when I realized I can't even remember if someone corrected me but I remember I realized as time went on, that's not the way you say it. So I read magazines, or I try to read magazines. I would look at posters and magazines and, believe it or not, video games. I always credit video games to helping me out tremendously with my English vocabulary. You know what I mean? I never went to I had like English teachers and all that in like, public schools and stuff, but I never had like personal classes to learn English. I guess I'm quote unquote self-taught, whatever that may mean. But like what I'm trying to say to wrap this up in a nice little beautiful bow for you is that if you don't consider video games to be art, then I can tell you from firsthand experience that video games are at least very educational. Even if the subject matter is something that you may think is garbage, like, it might be little rabbits bouncing around picking up power ups, or it might be a guy just shooting other guys in first person mode. Like, there's something to be learned, new words to be learned from that. There's new countries that I've never heard of, new states that I've never heard of. You know, lots of things that these games that some people would consider brain candy, and not in a good sense. Some people would consider these games shitty and completely lacking in educational resources. You can learn something from even that, which I have. I learned a lot of English, a lot of geographical places because of video games. So, not to get all sentimental, I'm just saying that, they're not, if you don't view them as art, at least take it from me. There's definitely something to learn from them. And I do learn. I mean, now I know good English. And I'm not just going to say that was just because of video games. Obviously, it was for other things too. But it was a big help. It was a big help. So, I guess take from that what you may. But next time someone asks you, hey, man, are video games art? Just hit them with the, of fucking course they are. And then punch them. No, don't punch them. Don't do that last part. But of course fucking video games are, without a shadow of a doubt. All right, guys. I'll see ya.